So settle in and make yourself comfortable. We are going to have a Friday evening chat with Dana Laake, and I am absolutely thrilled to welcome her. Welcome, Dana.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and it's good to see you.
It's so good to see you. So the last time I saw Dana face to face, I think was 2006. We've had a phone call since then and some emails, but this is great to see your face again. So I just want to give everybody a little background on Dana, who she is in general and who she is to me. So Dana Laake is a licensed nutritionist. She lives in Kensington, Maryland, but has enjoyed the freedom of discovering she can work from anywhere. So she takes her clients by Zoom now and is traveling back and forth to her new beach house in Delaware. So that's very exciting. Within her practice, Dana provides preventive and therapeutic medicinal nutritional therapy to adults and children. She was an honors graduate from Temple University with degrees in health science and dental hygiene. She received her master's degree in nutrition from the University of Maryland and was a recipient of the Temple University 50th Anniversary Outstanding Alumnus Award, congratulations, and served as a Maryland legislative assistant on health issues, was co-author of the legislation that established licensure boards for dietetics and nutrition in both Maryland and Washington, D.C., and has served 4 gubernatorial appointments on 2 healthcare regulatory boards, both dentistry and dietetics, and has been a partner in 3 functional medicine practices and provides local and national continuing education courses, in addition to writing and hosting a radio show, The Essentials of Healthy Living, on 1500 AM. And I've listened to that recently. It's wonderful, great resource. So Dana is a scientific advisor and content contributor for the Autism Exchange and for the Neurological Health Foundation Healthy Child Guide. She's an autism treatment researcher and co-author of the ADHD and Autism Nutritional Supplement book. So this is her most recent book, this 3rd edition. It's fantastic. You can see my notes sticking out. Highly recommend it, whether or not you have a child on the spectrum or not. So I'm going to give a little rundown on who Dana is to me, now that you know her bio. Back in 2006, I received an MS diagnosis and was chatting about my fears and concerns with another mother at the bus stop. And she said, "Oh, you might want to talk to this woman, Dana Laake. She has treated my kids who were on the autistic spectrum, and she's been fantastic. You know, I know MS and autism aren't the same, but she might be able to help you." And it's the best advice I ever took. I went down to go see Dana in the throes of trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And was I going to be able to work? And was I going to be able to have any more kids? And was I going to be able to walk in a year? And just really panicking. And Dana said, "You're going to be fine. Let's just sit down and talk about all the things that we can do to help." 4 hours I was there in her office. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember that, Dana, but 4 hours.
Yes.
I left there with more hope than I had felt in the 3 neurologists that I had seen. And really, I mean, you gave me a new view on life and on my illness as being just a thing, not my focus in my life, and that I could really turn things around and I could live a healthy, long life. And here we are 15 later, I have a 3rd child and I'm doing great. So I'm so grateful for you and for my neighbor, Tracy, who told me about you. And I'm thrilled to interview you here tonight.
Well, it's a pleasure. I love hearing these stories from patients, and sometimes I may not hear what you've been sharing, but it is very gratifying. And when my friends tell me I should be retiring, I said, "You've got to be kidding me. What golf course do you think I belong on? I get to participate in miracles."
Yep.
And there's just retirement is not a word in our household. It's not an option for either my husband or me. And I love what I do. I absolutely love it. And I want to get the message out. So I appreciate the opportunity that we have today, Lauren. This is wonderful to be able to talk to you about diets, about autism. And healthy diets are healthy, whether you have autism, MS, or you just want to be healthy. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So thank you again so much for being here. So my first question is, what got you into nutrition?
It's a good question. I was interested in dentistry because I worked for the dentist that did the orthodontic work on me. And then I decided I wanted to be a dental hygienist. So I came from a profession that prevents problems. And dentistry and dental hygiene are one of the few professions trying to put themselves out of business by teaching people brushing, flossing, oral health care, and diet. When I eventually went into the medical practices, I was shocked to find out in medicine, the only prevention was vaccination. There was no discussion of diet. This was in the 70s. No discussion of lifestyle changes. It was all in the genes. There was nothing you could do about it. And I never believed that. I never believed that. And a person, one of my colleagues, gave me a book by Adele Davis, Eat Right to Keep Fit. And there was another book she had called Let's Have Healthy Children. And it resonated with me, and I was off and running. And then while I was a dental hygienist, I was fortunate to listen to Emmanuel Sharaskin, a physician and a dentist. And I told the colleague sitting next to me, that's what I'm going to do. And I went back to school to secure a master's in nutrition. And that was the beginning. I have in our acknowledgments, as I wrote down the many mentors through the years, I call it candle lighting. You know, you learn from the others. And nothing we do is truly original. We build on what someone else has done. So I will not take credit for all of those things. But in any case, our family physician was interested in the holistic aspects, functional medicine, complementary medicine, and asked me to go with him and open up a practice. And we did. And we were the third wave of these alternative practices in the Washington area. And I will tell you, it is not easy because boards did not like it. It was called quackery to treat people for a condition they didn't have. So isn't that what we do in dentistry? Mm-hmm. We are treating them for a condition they don't have. And that was okay. Now, you don't hear that definition anymore because the medical profession has made some changes. So it was interesting, and the kids just came along. And actually, the first child that I saw this remarkable change in was when I was working with Dr. Mitchell, and the mother had brought me in the report card, and the child, the teacher wrote, "This is the worst child I have ever had in my class." And so the child was addicted to milk. So I took the child off milk. And the child had been hitting and fighting and biting and wetting the bed. And within about a month, the mother said, no biting, no hitting, no wetting the bed. She showed me the new report card with stunning little remarks. So Dad decided that he was over it. They didn't need to stay on the diet. And he went to a birthday party and they let him have ice cream. And he got in a fight with the other children and they had to bring him home. And then he wet the bed and it started again. They thought it was a miracle, but that was my first miracle. Yeah. I had told them I had not done this with another child. I had read about it. And boy, was I on my way since then. And so I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. You wrote about that in the book, and that was good to hear the words from you directly, but that's a great story. Yeah. Was there a specific transition to functional medicine, or did that just sort of evolve?
It evolved, and I finally had to stop dental hygiene. I loved being a dental hygienist. I was the first female and first dental hygienist to serve on a board of dental examiners. And I stayed in dental hygiene until I thought, okay, all the states now have hygienists on boards, and I probably need to move on. And it would just be too hard to keep both practices going. And so I set it up the way dentistry and dental hygiene are set up. I did the nutrition. I worked under the physician in collaboration with the physician. And so it really worked very well. And at that time, nutritionists didn't have what we now have, medical nutrition therapy. Patients can get reimbursed, with insurance. It's an AMA designation, and it's official. So we've come a long way, a real long way.
Right, right. And from that first child, was he your inspiration to have a specialty and a focus on ADHD and autism, or did that evolve?
No, it found me. It was just, I kept seeing more children, and then I started getting calls. One from a psychologist who said, look, I never thought diet really could change behavior, but your kids are different. What are you doing? And I learned a lot about what I was doing by listening to the families and to the doctors and social workers who were asking, what are you doing? And one called and said, all right, I have a child I'm working with who has moved 6 months inside of a month. What are you doing that makes this happen? And so she started saying to patients, so we don't waste money, get the nutrition right. And then I can work with your child, and the child will be accessible to improvements. And so I learned a lot. And I would sit, we would meet and talk about what she was seeing. I would tell her what she could start sharing with patients. And so it just, one day I turned around and it was like, oh my gosh, look at all these kids. And the Autism Research Institute, which I'd been a member of, it's about 56 years old. I think I was a member in 50 years I've been a member. And originally they were just doing newsletters. There weren't meetings. And in the 90s, the scientists came. The doctors, the pediatricians, cell biologists, neurologists, pediatricians, etc. They came and said, look, there's something metabolic going on, and we're going to find what it is. And that was huge, just huge. And so I took courses from these individuals, and many of them were professionals who had children who had autism or ADHD or other neurological, psychological disorders. And so they were motivated, and then they became specialists because they were using these techniques. And so it really blossomed and bloomed. And what I loved, when we used to have the Autism Research Institute meetings, parents were included, researchers, educators, everybody was together in the same room. And they would have the recovered children take the stage and talk and tell what it was like. There's never a dry eye. And I've been in medicine, I've been in dentistry, I've been in nutrition. I never cried at medical in any kind of a medical conference, nor did I at dental conferences. But I can tell you, every time we gather, And now I'm part of, I've been fortunate to be part of what the Autism Research Institute sponsors, and it's an international think tank. And I cry at those, that look how far we've come and how exciting it is.
Yeah. Wow. So you don't have a personal story. There's nobody in your family, but it just.
No, I have one nephew who has benefited. I have 70 nieces and nephews, grandnieces, grandnephews. I'm a very large family. And I was surprised that we didn't see more of it. Yes, we see a lot of ADHD, you know, among the children, but not, I was surprised that we didn't have more. And this young man did so well that the school asked, they said, he's the only one with this diagnosis that isn't on medication. What have you done? And he, when he was little and I had him on omega-3s that had kind of an orange flavor, he called it Aunt Dana's icing.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, and then I found Dr. Compart and and it really is how you connect. She has said when you read the acknowledgments that she was taught there was nothing diet could do for development in children, that it had nothing to do with it. And certainly autism was not affected by diet. It was considered quackery. And she said, I wish I could find all those parents I misinformed and apologize. So I had a patient that was her patient, and the parents asked her if she could monitor her son while they worked through the gluten-free, casein-free diet. So we did. And he is one of those miracles that in a very short period of time went from nonverbal to verbal. Now, it doesn't happen all the time. And we emphasize in the book, if your child is not responding, do not give up. There's more to do. And so there are some of these kids that with a certain supplement, verbal, when they were nonverbal. It happens, but it's not the most common thing that happens. It's usually a progress of improvements, and then they have therapies. So there's a lot to do. It's very hard work for both the parents and the patients. And we say they're courageous. These patients are courageous. So she called me and she said, what is this? How can I learn about it? Where do I go? What do I do? And I always say she pestered me, and I say that very kindly, because unlike many practitioners who don't bother to ask, why has this child improved? They would have improved anyway. They really didn't have autism. It was a wrong diagnosis. And that's hard to swallow when people have worked so hard. So she and I really have shared quite a few patients, and we co-authored this book. And when we sold 3,000, we thought, oh my goodness, that's a lot. And we're at 100,000.
Yay.
100,000. I still cannot believe it. And my son said, Mom, you didn't sell 100,000 books. You changed 100,000 households. Makes me want to tear up.
Yeah.
Because that is the case. And we're very proud of that. And the reason we write these books, the time that's invested, it is not a money generating issue for us. It's really from the heart.
Right.
We are very glad that we've got what is the third edition of the main cookbook, and we expanded to the other diets. We really wanted an expansion so that parents can look at symptoms that a given diet would help. So if your child has a lot of those symptoms, then maybe they can go beyond gluten-free and casein-free, Maybe they need the specific carbohydrate diet or the low oxalate diet or the low phenol diet. And we give a lot of very specific information, but we also use these grids because I found parents saying, oh, my neighbor's child did so well on an SCD diet, so I want to put my son on it. And I said, well, here are the symptoms of a child who would need that diet. And her son had none of those symptoms. And I said, there's no sense going on an avoidance diet that you don't need to avoid those foods. That doesn't apply to him. It was very hard for her to understand. She says, but her son did so well. Well, he's unique. If you don't have peanut allergy, you can eat peanuts. And I think that's the simplest suggestion I can make to people.
Yeah. I don't know if I flagged that there was a great quote in here that talked about somebody had a bumper sticker about being unique. And I should have flagged it, but it said basically everybody is unique. So yeah, so just picking up a diet that worked for somebody else doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work for you. And you have to really know each individual person and what's best for them. Yeah. So
Yes.
your partnership with Dr. Compart. So this is the book again, everyone, if you're looking for it. I got it overnight on Amazon. It was a pretty quick turnaround. So you and Dr. Compart, am I saying her name correctly?
Yes.
You wrote this book for who? And how do they use it?
Well, we really wrote it for families, and we wrote it the way we see people in our offices, hand holding them, explaining given diets, going through the symptoms. And I think that was really the best way to write it. And it obviously works. You know, if the book isn't selling, then it's not working. So this has worked, and we've just expanded it, but it is also for professionals who want to give their patients, pediatricians who are interested in the diet treatments, they will use the book for that purpose because it's very thorough, and we give all kinds of references. We reference our colleagues who have expertise in this area. We reference all kinds of websites and organizations to contact because it's a lot of work. And the more families, practitioners, patients read about this, the better they can help the families. And that's why before I see a family, I like to say, look at these books, familiarize yourself, and see, you know, circle stuff in the book that you think applies to your child. That makes our consult much more efficient. And I also give them the supplement handbook, which I really think is the best book. There's not another one out there like it. And our parents were saying, talk about the symptoms and how the nutrient deficiencies give these symptoms. And at first I didn't think that was the best way to write it, but I got convinced that it was. And it's nice for, if you're giving a supplement, the parent can look it up, read about it, understand which form of magnesium or zinc or calcium we want to use and why, and how much. We really spoon feed. And it is intended for families and professionals. It's a great guide.
Yeah. So a couple things there. You mentioned the supplement book, and do you have it within reach? Could you show that?
Yes, I love this.
Yeah, so I don't have that one yet. So that looks fantastic. So how long has that one been out?
This has been out, I think it's about 6 years.
Okay.
And as I said, I really think that this is the most unique of the books. But interesting, recipes sell.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. The editor said, yes, recipes sell. And we expanded our recipes to include a lot of ethnic recipes. So we're trying to be more broad, and it's been a really from the heart effort for both of us for a long time.
Right. I also wanted to touch on a couple times you brought up the why and looking at the why. And that was one thing that you brought up to me, you know, all those years ago when I was sitting in your office, and we looked at, well, now you have this MS diagnosis, but let's figure out why. And then we can more effectively treat what's going on. And, you know, we discovered, well, why was probably connected, at least in part, that I was very low in vitamin D. I'd lived in Scotland for 2 years. I had exclusively breastfed 2 children. I had been vegetarian. I did not supplement. So I'm sure my vitamin D was very low. That was one of the whys, you know, and we went through a series of, you know, many conversations over these 4 hours to look at all the why. And this group that we're in at the moment, Brain Wellness and Dementia Prevention, used to be called Why. The why is bigger than what, because you have
I like that.
you have to get
That's
to
great.
the why. Yeah, it's so impactful. So thank you for bringing that up. And as we were chatting earlier, I was saying that when I, you know, first booked you for this evening, I didn't realize that it was National Nutrition Month, and that was a happy little accident when I found that on the calendar. And I put up a quote today on Instagram from your book, and I just want to read, because you mentioned this woman already. In the 1960s, nutritionist Adele Davis wisely said, "You are what you eat." We have modified that to, "You are what you eat, digest, absorb, transport, uptake, and utilize based on your healthy or unhealthy exposures and your own unique genes and biochemistry." So you taught me that it isn't just what I put in my body. It's all those other things too. Yeah.
Yeah, and we are looking much more now at gene variants. And we know in autism, there are certain pathways that are often faulty. The ability to remove toxins is something everybody has. But when that's inefficient, it's like having a garbage disposal that is very small, and you're putting the neighborhood's garbage, trying to put it through the disposal. The disposal doesn't work, the kitchen stinks up. And that's my best metaphor for detoxification, because if you can't get rid of the chemicals, they're just recycling. They affect the brain, they affect the gut, they affect behavior, focus, attention. So it's a big deal. And we've always known this before we could focus on, we knew the gut was an issue, but we didn't know exactly how or why. We just knew it was. And we used probiotics 40, 50 years ago, before it was really popular in this country. This country was very behind. Europe had been doing this for a long time, and America was very slow to get on board, but the science is there. And so, and the research, so it really works very well. And I like to refer to environmental modification of gene expression. It's what you come into the world with and what you do to it. And so we have a lot of power. There's a term, epigenetics, which says if you have identical twins, and there are certainly studies like this, and one twin drinks and has a terrible diet and smokes and the other doesn't, they are very different, because we are, you know, just like a tree has rings and we know how old the tree is by that, we have that going on. So we get these markers called histone markers on the genes specific to what we're doing, healthy or not healthy. And so twins become less identical. as their lives diverge. And I used to see there were twin ladies that worked in the Highs store near us, and they were absolutely identical. They lived together, they worked together, you couldn't tell the difference. They were having the exact same lifestyle and diet. And so I always was, I remarked to them, I said, you all, I can't tell the difference. And so lifestyle is a very big deal. And I also talk about the camel and the straws. People say, well, which straw broke the camel's back? It's the total load. It's the total load. And once that, it's the resilience of the camel and the load on the camel, not just removing one or two straws, but trying to remove as much as you can and helping the camel to heal. I just love that metaphor. I don't think there's a better one.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, could you explain toxic load? So you touched on it. You talked about everybody's varying abilities to biotransform or detoxify with the garbage disposal analogy, which is a good one. I'm going to use that. And then the camel and the straw analogy. So what are the toxicities that people need to focus on, whether you are on the autistic spectrum or just for general health? What should people look at?
Well, definitely detoxification is a big deal. We want people to hydrate and consume the water they need to. Now, if you're eating a diet that has a lot of fruits and vegetables in it, you're getting water in that diet. If you're not, you may need to add more water to your diet. So you can't say everybody has to have this given amount of water. And both water and salt are done by taste. You should listen to your body. You don't set an alarm and go drink water. Your body's telling you you're thirsty, go drink some water. So you pay attention to that. As far as what's unhealthy, we have these avoid lists, and it's generic. Getting rid of all artificial stuff, artificial additives, preservatives, toxins, junk, getting rid of all of that sometimes makes the biggest difference. If people aren't doing that, it's hard to help them get well. Somebody says, I can't give up my diet sodas. I go, you're really making it hard for you to get well. It's something you've got to do. So when we look at the avoids, it goes into all these artificial coloring agents. We've got 64,000 man-made chemicals, 200 of which have been tested. They were grandfathered in. And the testing is, you can't possibly do the testing. You have to test each chemical alone and with one other, two other, three other, four other, 60,000 other, because there's a synergism among toxins so that they become more damaging when they have more toxins with them. And so it's like a gang of thieves, they attract more thieves. And really pay attention to healthy eating, and organic is the way to go. Contaminated drinking water. And the fluoride issue is a very big issue. The form of fluoride waters never got approved for it. That was a big surprise to me. And I come out of dentistry, fluoride has been helpful, but putting it in the water supply has shown a lower IQ among children in communities where the water was fluoridated with the wrong form of fluoride. And the National Academy of Sciences has a 500-page book on that. And these are things that said this to me, said, that's the first time we've ever put a medicine in the water supply. Everything else that goes in the water supply is to make it healthier. But putting fluoride in was the first time they put a medicine in. And I had not thought of that. It was a patient who said that to me, and it was really an eye opener. So we've got a lot of natural toxins. We've got excitotoxins. So many people that have ADHD or autism, or people that are hyper or have anxiety, they are sensitive to excitotoxins. And so some of these toxins are excitatory, and we have more excitatory than calming. So if you think of a teeter-totter, then you want it balanced, but you've got all these excitotoxins. Boom, now you've upset the balance. And the calming, we get the calming when we go to more natural foods, organic foods, and some foods are calming, more calming to people than others. So we try to get people away from that. And also, this is, I mean, you mentioned it, this is true for all people. Glycemic control. Diabetes has doubled and tripled in the last 30 years. It's terrible how much diabetes we have. And it's from glycemic foods like sweets and carbohydrates and junk and electrolyte drinks and diet and regular sodas. But it's beyond that. It's high fructose corn syrup, which is a double whammy on sugar. And we go further into looking at the diet and getting rid of deep fried foods, canola oil, palm kernel oil, not palm oil, palm kernel oil. And then non-organic deli meats. We don't want the deli meats, and there are deli meats that are organic and that you have to keep in the freezer. And that's an okay substitute. And any food which causes the individual to have negative reactions. So just because a food may bother me doesn't mean it bothers somebody else. And many times in families, if one is reactive, the whole family is off that food. And that can be maybe helpful, maybe not, because we each need to determine what food we don't like. And if you're eating a food and you get it here near your mouth and you feel like, I can't eat that, don't eat it. Don't eat it. Listen to your body. Your nose is here for a reason. It's not here because we need to smell before we eat. We are very well constructed. And that nose will tell you a whole lot about whether that food's good or not. And I have a granddaughter who's very sensitive, and they were eating this meat that was cooked in a pot in a restaurant, and she ran to the bathroom and spit it out. Her father said, "It's great." He was up all night throwing up.
Oh.
I said,
right.
Listen to her. Listen to her.
Right.
Your body's telling you, giving you all these symptoms and signs and warnings. Also, so now we say, what do we eat? You know, I always feel badly because we're saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. But there's no one diet for everyone on earth. Diets are very different. For instance, in natural cultures, and I'm only talking about natural cultures, and that is not the United States of America. So we look at natural cultures, and in Inuit people, their diet is 50 to 70% fat, mostly fish fat, okay? And in African cultures, it can be as low as 10%. So to come up with a fat percentage for everybody is just wrong. Now, it's, you know, sometimes you've got to guide a person, and so you say, eat some fat, eat protein, eat fiber, and you try to guide them, but there are too many diets that are too absolute that this is the right diet for everyone, and if it's not working, you're not doing enough. And that's a bad message because you need to listen. And when I got into this, I thought I wanted to be a vegan vegetarian. And it was before I really knew as much about diet, and I was constantly hungry. And I found out I needed to take that salad and add salmon or chicken and occasionally beef. Perfect. No pasta, no bread. And once I discovered what worked, it was very easy to feel good all day and not have that dip that people get around 3 to 5 in the afternoon when they're coming down there. We produce a lot of cortisol in the morning. It drops at noon, it drops in the afternoon. If our blood glucose is also dropping, we're dumb between 3 and 5. Okay. It takes a while to recover, and it doesn't have to be that way. So the other thing that's interesting is the Institute of Medicine reversed all of their recommendations, not all, most of their recommendations. They said that they couldn't validate the studies that told us to eat hydrogenated oils, to not eat butter and not eat lard, to avoid eggs because they're dangerous, they cause heart disease, though the countries that ate lots of eggs did not have an abundance of heart disease. That cholesterol is dangerous and it causes heart disease. It does not. So the Institute of Medicine said, look, our advice has been wrong for 50 years. And one of the members said, we're not actually going to do this. The reason is that researchers jimmied their data, not because they're evil, but they had these deep beliefs that certain things were the cause, and they were out to prove that. Instead of saying, let me look. And for instance, Italy and France have high-fat diets and high cholesterol diets. They have among the lowest heart disease death rates in the world. And now there's lots of shopping locally, okay, on a daily basis, a regular basis. The diet is different. It's a Mediterranean diet. So there's a lot about that diet, but it was high in the good fats, not in fried fats, not in hydrogenated oils, which they did not permit. And neither did South America. And right next door to me, and I say sort of, in the next county is the USDA. They promoted hydrogenated oils. The USDA, the American Heart Association, National Heart, Lung, Blood Institute, all of these organizations promoted what eventually drove over 300,000 people to their early deaths. And one doctor said, well, we just didn't know until the 90s. And I responded in an article and I said, oh no,
right.
We knew in the 50s and 60s. And so this country made some big mistakes. And I don't blame people for getting fed up, you know, when they say, well, what do we do? What do we do?
Right. Yeah, I had blogged about the partially hydrogenated oil, and I had a professor, his name was Francois, and so he was French, and this was for anatomy and physiology, and he, at that point, you know, hydrogenated oil was everywhere, and he said, stay away from it. This was maybe 92 or something, yeah. 93, and he said butter. He was French, butter. But at that point, you know, hydrogenated oil was everywhere, and he explained the physiology behind it. And I went and told everyone that would listen, don't have partially hydrogenated oils. You know, when the kids would go trick-or-treating, you know, 10 years later, we'd look through all the candy and we'd take all the ones that had partially hydrogenated oil and artificial colors and artificial flavors and put them in the trash. They'd be left with like 6 pieces of chocolate, like, Mom. But then finally, partially hydrogenated oils were outlawed. And I had friends from 20 years ago saying, thank you for telling me that. But the science is often, 20, or the policy is 20 years behind the science.
It is. And one of the researchers, first of all, I went to the University of Maryland, and their human nutrition and animal science department is the one that did the major work on hydrogenated oils. And Mary Enig, one of my colleagues, traveled the world to spread this word. Okay, so you have, next to all of these organizations recommending hydrogenated oils, and a dietetics department at the University of Maryland recommending it. And then you've got the other department, my professor, Sam Punya. I like to recognize these people that carved the path. They made the pathway. And I said, I almost hugged him. I called him. I said, what are you teaching and what book? And I looked at it and I knew I was in the right place. And he said, let's talk about partially hydrogenated oils and trans fatty acids and what's wrong with them and why they're dangerous. They cause fetal death rate. And FASB, which is the science journal, wouldn't permit Maryland to list fetal death rate increase in the rats because that would be picked up by a journalist. But Cyprone P450A5, that's not going to be picked up. Okay, nobody knows what that is. And that was when I realized, oh my gosh, there's lack of integrity in science even. Now, the Institute of Edible Oils and Shortening and Edible Oils sat on the review board of FASB. So they were putting the kibosh on it. Now, one of the researchers lived to be 105, and he sued the government maybe 15 years ago for failing to ban them when it was clear they were damaging. He lived long enough to sue them because he was one of the primary researchers and advocates on this. What we did is change gene expression for generations so that the children of people who ate margarines were going to have more abnormal problems, and they would pass that on. For example, if a mother has a baby and she's of a good, healthy weight, but then she becomes obese and she has a second baby, that first baby doesn't have risk for obesity. The second baby does. And so many people say, my parents were overweight, this is genetic. In a way, that's true. It is true because the genes got changed. But the good news about epigenetics is that you can eat right and make the difference now.
Right.
And so I tell my children they owe me big time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that just takes us back to where you gave me hope. And I'm sure, hundreds and hundreds of other patients where you put the power back in your lap. Like the choices that you make every day make a difference in your current health and your future health. And that is the whole point of this group, which was inspired after I lost my mom to dementia. And I just wanted to mention, she was also another person that you helped because after I was educated and I did an elimination diet, and an elimination diet is one of the things that I do with many of my clients. We usually go through it in a group for the group support. It's effective that way. But my mom started watching, me feel better, and she would always feel absolutely exhausted after breakfast. She would always have like Cheerios with sugar and milk and then have to go back to bed. And you taught me to control blood sugar and always to have protein and fat anytime you have anything. So if you're going to have an apple, have it with some almond butter. If you're going to have some carrots, dip it in some hummus, so you can stabilize the blood sugar. And she started to pick that up and do that. And she had chronic fatigue syndrome for 20 or 30 years.
Mm.
And after she changed her diet, she said, I don't even feel like I have chronic fatigue syndrome anymore at all. She was already in an early to mid-stage Alzheimer's or dementia at that point. But she really had a good, a good dementia. I don't know if there's a good dementia, but she was always, kind, and every caregivers came to her room to cheer themselves up. She never really forgot who we were.
That's wonderful.
I mean, she always stayed connected with my dad, and so, your ripple effect continues. You teach one person who teaches somebody else, who teaches somebody else.
Well, and that's what I call candlelighting.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do. You had also mentioned that what do I recommend to any parents who have a child that is formally diagnosed, or the parent's suspicious that there's ADHD or ASD, autism spectrum disorder. So number one, if the child is young, there's infants and toddlers, and it's critical to contact that. You get free evaluation from birth through 34 and a half months of age. I do not know why it's 34 and a half months. Okay, I can't answer that. And they have to come evaluate. Once a child's been identified, they have to evaluate and get it done within a month. And so this is a big change from what it was like years ago when parents waited for so long. And do not watch and wait. Do not let your pediatrician tell you to watch and wait. If there's something you see, you need to address it. So you get to a developmental pediatrician, particularly one who is more familiar with ADHD and autism. The reason our child is deviating just a little bit, just deviating just a little bit. Well, let's watch and wait. But what children knows how fast they grow. And we cannot afford to allow children to continue off the path for any length of time because there's so many services available. And so I encourage parents to not just stick with the services that are offered through the county and the schools, but to get private services as much as they can. And there are scholarships that are available. Not enough, because it is expensive. It is expensive to have private services. But these are the kids that are going to get well, that have the best chance of getting well. And I wish I could predict which one. Sometimes I'll see a child and think, this is going to be tough. And they are remarkable. They actually go through recovery. Somebody else, I think it's going to be easy, and it's not, because we don't know everything. We can only do what we know at the time. And the gene variants and looking at these gene variants has been a very big deal. And a medical doctor said to me, but Dana, you're treating people before they develop a condition. I said, yeah, that's what I did in dental hygiene. Yes, what's the harm? What do we do now? We take a family history and we treat, if diabetes runs in the family, we say to this individual, here's a better diet that you should follow. But when you have the gene variants and you can look at them, and every enzyme is dependent on multiple nutrients. So this is the detective work. I love this.
Right.
And now we can be specific, and now we can make a real difference in an individual's life in a family.
Yeah. That is exactly my goal now, is to help people who have had a family history of dementia and start focusing on what we can do 20, 30 years before any signs even develop. So thank you for dedicating your life to prevention and for helping the many, many, many families that you've helped. And again, probably many more than you know, because of this ripple effect that I mentioned, the candle lighting that you call it. Is there anything else that you want to share before that we haven't touched on before I share a quote from this book?
No, I think we've covered a lot.
We have covered a lot. Yeah. So this is a fabulous book. Again, I recommend it if you have a child that you're concerned that might have ADHD, that might be could potentially benefit from this book. And I tell you, I'm blessed to not have a child in these categories, but it doesn't matter because I have MS, my mom had dementia. This is good for anybody and everybody. And we are going to follow some of these recipes that look fabulous. And all the information between the recipes is phenomenal. And I just wanted to leave us with a quote that starts chapter 4. One of the many moms that you helped, moms and children. She says, I was blessed to have a child who was an immediate and dramatically positive responder to dietary intervention. Within 36 hours after we stopped casein, which, and for anyone who doesn't know, that's the milk protein, his incessant screaming and head banging were almost gone. And we had some eye contact back. Within 5 days after we stopped gluten, the protein of many of the grains, his lifelong rash was gone and his stools improved. Dietary infractions have produced equally dramatic results, so we have been very motivated to continue the diet. Maintaining his special diet is very difficult, but not nearly as hard as living with a severely autistic child. For us, diet has been one of the top three interventions that have aided in his recovery from autism. The mother of John, a 5-year-old recovering from autism. So one of the many, I'm sure.
They say it very well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana, for being here with us tonight. It was an absolute treat to talk with you.
Well, my treat as well. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much.